and recording now.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us for our first HD happy hour. I am Ginger and I'm part of the HD team at the HDSA Center of Excellence at VCU Health in Richmond, Virginia. We are recording tonight's webinar and will be posting it for future viewing. Tonight we are joined by several officers who will be discussing home firearm safety as well as crisis intervention. The officers joining us this evening are Sergeant Blackwell, Sergeant Guimau, and Officer Foster. Sergeant Blackwell has been a police officer for almost 20 years. He started his career at VCU Police Department before moving to Virginia State University. At VCU, he split his time on both the academic and medical campuses, and this provided him some unique opportunities to interact with not only students, but also with patients and their families in the hospital, including the ER, the Children's Treatment Center, and the psychiatric unit. He has had extensive training in law enforcement, gun safety, and mental health issues. Joining Sergeant Blackwell will be Sergeant Guimau and Officer Foster. Sergeant Guimau has also been an officer for almost 20 years. He is certified in firearm instructor at VCU. He's at VSU. They have worked together at both VCU and VSU. Officer Foster has been an officer for 5 years and has spent his entire career at VSU. He has received specialized training in crisis intervention. Sergeant Blackwell, would you like to start?
Thank you, Ginger. All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. Today, we're going to talk about the basics of safely keeping a firearm in your home. For those of you who are already gun owners, I'm not sure all of my presentation will be new to you, but we'll also be discussing how firearm safety can be impacted by the presence of family members with mental health issues in your residence, which is something that I think is less frequently discussed. So firearms can usually be kept safely in the residence when a person who lives there is having a mental health crisis, but not always. Each situation must be evaluated individually. We've all heard that guns don't kill people, people don't kill people, and that is true. But what's also true is that people with guns kill a lot more people than people without guns. In the United States, firearms account for 52% of all successful suicide attempts. That means that all other methods combined account for less than half of the total suicides. Those of you who are here today may be here because you know someone you know has a gun in their house and you'd like to learn more about how to safely store or keep the gun, how to unload it safely. Or you may be having a person with a mental health crisis in your house who has access to a gun and you want to keep that firearm away from them and keep the firearm safe. I've been a law enforcement officer for almost 20 years, like Ginger said. Guimau has as well, and Officer Foster has been here for over 5 years. Foster and Guimau have extensive training in their areas that they're going to help me out in. So like I said before, firearms can usually be kept in a residence safely, even when a person there is having a mental health crisis, but not always. We're going to evaluate that by the individual situation. First, we're going to go over the basics of firearm safety. Then we'll discuss the ways in which mental health will impact that. So to firearm safety, some basic rules are: treat every weapon as if it's loaded until you personally verify that it's not. Always point the muzzle in a safe direction. Downrange, if you're on a firearms range, or in a residence at the ground, is the safest direction. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. Be aware of what's beyond your target in case you miss, or in case your round penetrates your intended target. But that means if the bullet goes through what you're shooting at, it could potentially hit someone or something behind what you're shooting at. And keep your weapon unloaded unless it's in use. So the next thing you want to consider is where to store your firearm. The safest way is locked in a box or a vault, unloaded with the ammunition stored in a separate location. I personally do not recommend storing the ammo in a separate location based on my situation. I'm more personally worried about home invasion than I am in any member of my family using the firearm inappropriately. So I like to keep the ammo with the weapon and have it ready to load and go should I need to. But your situation may be different than that, and you may want to consider, if you're worried about someone in your household using the weapon inappropriately, keeping your ammo in a separate place. Another option might be a gun safe, or if you can't access a gun safe, a gun lock. Here's a short video on how to use a gun lock.
Avery Palace here with Women's Outdoor News, and in this video I'm going to go over various methods to safely store and secure your firearms. As a responsible gun owner, it's imperative that you safely store and secure your firearms. But in order to meet your unique needs, there's a few things that you may want to consider, such as your living arrangements, your budget, and the amount of firearms that you're going to be storing. Now let's review those methods. Trigger locks are effective yet inexpensive means for securing your firearms, and they may come with your gun purchase. Cable locks prevent the action or barrel from closing, which prevents the firearm from being fired. These are inexpensive as well and often come with your firearm purchase. Gun safes come in various shapes and sizes. Some are small enough to sit on your nightstand, while others are big enough to fit 80 guns. These methods can be used independently or together. Regardless of the method you select, make sure that you're always properly storing your firearms. What's your favorite way to store your firearms?
All right, so there's some options there. And I also want to talk about what kind of weapon you want to keep in your home. You want to keep the right kind of weapon in your home for your needs. For home defense, I recommend a handgun. Any kind of long gun, whether it's a shotgun or a rifle, will be unwieldy in narrow spaces for private residence. In addition, they have some other drawbacks. Shotguns can't be loaded as quickly as a weapon with a magazine feed, and they have significant kick, which makes them difficult to re-aim after a miss. Rifles are a very powerful weapon, probably too powerful to safely fire indoors. If you miss with a rifle, the round will penetrate almost any barrier in a home and potentially hit whatever's on the other side. I've personally seen an AR round penetrate steel plate. Wooden plaster will not stop a round that powerful at all. So that brings us to handguns. Handguns have the advantage of being small, easier to use in a confined place, and it makes them easier to conceal when in storage. A revolver is a good choice, but has the disadvantage that it's not as easy to load as a semi-automatic pistol. Like I said, magazine feeds are easier to load in an emergency. Speed loader can help with a revolver, but it still takes a bit more fine muscle control than a magazine, and adrenaline wrecks fine muscle control. So if you're looking for a weapon for home defense, I recommend a semi-automatic pistol. It's easy to load, safer than some other weapons, and easier to use than some other weapons. I'm gonna turn this over to Sergeant Gmo, who recorded some videos with us to discuss the safe loading and unloading. Hey, I have Sergeant Gmo with me here from VSU Police. He's VSU Police's firearms instructor. He's going to explain to us the proper loading and unloading of a firearm.
All right, hello. First of all, this is a semi-automatic firearm. This is a SIG 229 double action, and basically there are two main components that you'll be using to unload this firearm. One is going to be the magazine release, and the other one's going to be the slide stop. Basically, what you would do to unload the firearm is you would depress this button right here, do the mag release. As you depress it, the magazine which holds the ammunition will eject from the firearm. Of course, you want to point it in a safe direction. And next you're going to do is you want to rack the slide a couple times to make sure all the ammunition is out. Like so. Then you're going to use your slide stop to lock back the slide. By pushing it upwards and pulling back the slide. Then you want to check inside the chamber, make sure there's no brass or any type of bullet inside. You check with your pinky too, stick it in there. And also make sure that the magazine is released and there's no magazine in the firearm. And that's how you unload the firearm. Alright, to load the firearm, from the position you have with the slide lock back, you simply take the magazine, which in this case for safety reasons we don't have live ammunition, but it'll be loaded with live ammo. Insert it into the mag well, use your palm, and seat the mag. You hear an audible click, give it a little tug, make sure it's in there. Next, you can do this one of two ways. You can either use the slide stop to release the slide, like so, and that loads the firearm. Or you can use what they call a slingshot method. Basically, grabbing the top of the firearm and just pulling back. And that loads the firearm as well.
I have a question, Sergeant Jima. Let's say you have stored your weapon with the unloaded but with the slide locked forward. Would you want to lock the slide back, insert the mag, and drop it? Or would it be just as easy to insert the mag and then just rack it back to chamber around?
Well, it really just depends upon your personal preference with your firearm. Really, because sometimes, like on this SIG, the slide release is slide stop, slide release is pronounced, as on this Glock it is not so pronounced. It's more flush with the frame. So it really depends on personal preference or how you were trained, but most of the time for both ways have the pros and cons. I mean, you can start from here, insert with the mag, and then do the slingshot method, but it depends upon, when you do the slingshot method, you want to basically pull back and let go. If you pull back and ride the slide forward, you may cause a malfunction, which you're going to have to clear. Now, the other way is with the slide stop, which is more simple. You don't have to worry about how much force you have to use or how slow you have to go. You just press the button and the actual mechanics do it for you.
All right. I would thank Sergeant Jima if he were here. He couldn't be here with us tonight because he's on duty right now. The point of that video, that last one, is not to ride the slide forward. It causes jams, if anyone didn't catch that. So we talked about the basics of gun ownership. Let's move on to what is a much more complicated issue of owning a gun and living with someone with a mental health issue. I'm going to turn it over to Officer Foster now, who's one of our crisis intervention officers.
How y'all doing? I'm Officer Foster. Today I'm gonna talk to you about people dealing with crises and how to de-escalate it and make your situation safe. All right, here's some numbers. Some mental health problems are actually more common throughout the years and in recent years. Here's some numbers to keep in mind. 1 in 4 adults would experience a mental health problem during their lifetimes. 1 in 17 are living with a serious mental illness, such as schizophrenia or a bipolar disorder. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. 60% of violent deaths in the United States are suicides. And again, 52% of suicides are committed with firearms. All right, so a crisis is a problem that exceeds the capacity of the individual to cope with that problem. Any person can have a crisis under bad circumstances. If you are with a person with a crisis, here are some things to remember. All right, please avoid the word "I understand" unless you've been through the problem that they're going to that they are dealing with. Also, try to avoid the word "calm down." That tends to elevate instead of de-escalate. Let's also don't be afraid to ask the person what is the problem and how can they help. Also, you can talk through the problem that they're dealing with, as far as if they have just broke up with their girlfriend or boyfriend, tell them ask them what happened, what was the issue. Try to have them process it in their mind and talk to you to get them to calm down and work through their problems on themselves. The next thing is, if you're concerned about this person and y'all have firearms in the place, please be mindful to remove all firearms from the house. Separate them from the firearm as far as possible, or even just get rid of the firearm altogether for your safety and their safety. So dealing with a crisis, it can be difficult, but if you are dealing with a crisis, please call 911. Sometimes nowadays they're dealing with outreach programs or phone numbers that you can call where the person is dealing with trauma or anything, and they can help talk to a counselor that's available 24/7. That's all I have.
Thank you, Officer Foster. So again, firearms can be safely kept in a residence. A person there who lives with a mental health crisis, but not always. Every situation is individual. So in review, remember to be safe when handling a firearm. If you choose to keep a firearm in your home, choose a weapon that best suits your needs. By storing your weapon in a locked location or keeping the weapon in a separate location from the ammunition or both, you can greatly reduce the risk of the weapon being used to commit violence in the home. When confronted with the potential mental health crisis in the home, try to de-escalate and get help if necessary. One final note about mental health and firearms. Although suicide is the more common phenomenon, some mental health issues can also cause aggressive or even homicidal thoughts. If you should ever become aware that you are living with a person who's having homicidal ideations, especially about you specifically, please remember that while the rate of suicides committed by firearms is 52%, the rate of homicides committed by people with firearms in the United States is 82%. So please get help. And that is all we have. I would open up for questions if we have any, but this is a recorded seminar. Thanks so much.
We actually do have some questions for you if you have time.
Oh, great. Go ahead.
So one thing that our patients often deal with is that they escalate very quickly. There's a recommendation from neurologists to let local fire departments know about their patients or their loved one who may have a tendency to be aggressive or to be have problems with escalation. how would you best recommend that we go about talking with our local police departments about our loved ones and their disease? And what are the steps that we can take ahead of time so that instead of escalating by calling the police, we call the police and there's a de-escalation that occurs?
Give the dispatcher, the person taking the call, as much information as possible. The more the officers know on scene and the more accurate the information is, the better. Officer Foster, you have anything to contribute to that?
Yes, if the person is dealing with a crisis or they have a history of crisis, it'd be best to know, let them know ahead of time of what you're dealing with. So, because sometimes officers patrol a certain area. So getting that information out early can have that officer already know what's going on before they get to the call. And they were like, oh, that's so-and-so. They give us a heads up about what they were dealing with.
Great. Thank you so much. One last question. We have many hunters in our area. Do you know of any ways to safely, so many of our patients have problems with extra movements or balance problems. Do you know of any adaptive training courses or anything where people can go to learn how to safely handle their hunting equipment?
No, I don't have that information. That would be a question for Sergeant Gimo, and he's not with us tonight. But if you go to your local firearms range, they usually have information like that available.
Okay, great.
Or you can research on the internet, safety with firearms classes. They'll pull up a list of people who have those classes. I mean, you might have to pay, but it's well worth it being safe and secure with your firearm.
Thanks, Foster.
No problem.
Thank you. Those are all the questions we have.
Okay.
We can't thank you all enough for joining us tonight. This has been really helpful and informative.
Happy to do it.
Nope. You're welcome anytime.
You're muted.
I was gonna say, I can't stop the recording from my side. Can you stop it, Pat?